Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome to another speed build for the Disney save. Today we're creating our first residential for Peter Pan, one of the last ones for Sulani. This is the second to last build, I believe. I'm like looking over at my list right now. This is the second to last build for Sulani. This is the lot that's all the way up at the tippy top in the corner near the volcano, which my fiance has already given me plenty of crap for because he thinks it's really funny that this particular lot is so close to a volcano. And I think there is something special about this lot that makes it so that you get like, I want to say it's like seismic activity or something like that. We're not going to worry about any of that right now because this was the perfect lot for this build. This is the Lost Boys Treehouse, or the Lost Boys Lookout was another name I came up with or stumbled across when I was going across Disney Wiki. They called it the Lookout. I've always called it the Treehouse, but it really isn't a treehouse. So it's a tree, and it seems like in the film it's like a dead tree that maybe the boys have sort of carved out, or maybe, you know, it's a little hollow, it's dead, and they have makeshifted it into a house for themselves. So they pull this like rope lever on the side of it that's hanging down, and I made something similar to that. It's not exactly the same because the version that they have in the film is not appropriate, but I made something with the same vibe. And when they pull that down, it opens all of the doors up off of the trunk, and you can sort of see that there's holes to get into the inside of the tree. And then in the tree, there's a spiral staircase down underground, and the house itself, where the characters actually live, is completely underground. Their house and all of the scenes like down there, they're literally walking around dirt. Like the floor is completely dirt with some animal skins laying here and there to compensate for, you know, comfortability. And the walls are literally dirt and rocks and gravel and more of the roots of this tree coming in and out of their given spaces. I think it's so cool. Like, I was excited to do this so long ago. It's like an iconic build for me. Everything from Peter Pan, if I haven't like mentioned this already, Peter Pan's one of my all-time favorites. I know that there's a lot of issues with it. There's a lot of like problematic things about it, but there's something about like the imagery, the characters, the dialogue, the art style of the film. I'm obsessed with everything about the way that it looks aesthetically. The Peter Pan ride is one of my all-time favorites at Magic Kingdom. I am one of those people that will wait 50 minutes in line to go on the pirate ships that float over London, even long before I lived here. And actually, I'm one of those kids that never got to go to Disney as a child. I always just got to hear about other kids going to Disney, so it was always the ride that I like thought about, and I didn't even really know what it was like, but it was like always the thing that I'm like, I love the Lost Boys, I love Peter Pan, I love all of it, so it was like the ride that I was obsessed with and I wanted to go on when I was a kid. As an adult, I can say it lives up to the hype. The one in Disneyland Paris, if you've ever been on it, those of you who have, please tell me if you feel this way as well. I feel like it's that ride but more dangerous. Like, it feels like you could fall out of the ships at any given moment on the Disney World version, but when you go to the Disneyland Paris version, it's worse somehow. I think you're in a pirate ship with multiple families, so they're bigger. One of the, if you sit like towards the back of the ship, you're slightly higher, like it's structured how an actual pirate ship would be, and then it goes faster. Like, you're zooming through London and Neverland, and it just feels really fast for how high you are up off the ground. Maybe that's just me, but I know I have heard other people say that they have that opinion as well. But so to get back to the build a little bit, when it comes to like the idea of this, I always thought of it as a treehouse, but they really do live underground. And like I mentioned in a previous video, I love building underground because it means I can pretty much do whatever I want. Now, this is a smaller lot, so once you create the area to kind of get down, and obviously without being able to actually go into the trunk, and it's not a debug tree, so it's not something where like Sims can sort of walk through it, I do have to make an area on the outside that Sims can get down underground. So right in that front entryway area where there's like that nook, that little rounded out bit there with the root, and then I put the archway there, I did make a hole and then created an area where your Sims would climb down ladders. I could have made like a weird little makeshift staircase because they do use stairs as far as I can tell to get down, but again, without the ability to do some spiral stairs, it's not going to make sense. So we're just going to keep it simple and do a couple of ladders down to the given level that we need. And then for the interior part of the build, it's really like such a fun build because there's so many things. Like it had to be sort of simple, so I don't have to clutter it up too much. I get to use a little bit more plants and rocks and vines and those sort of things to build up up some of that space around the build. And then because, again, it's underground, I can make it more of a weirder shape. So luckily from the film, and I rewatched a lot of the scenes that take place on this lot so I could kind of get the idea of what I was looking to do downstairs. You do get to see Peter's room. You do get to see that the Lost Boys live in like kind of a communal living area / the living room. It's probably the bigger portion of the home, and all of the boys most of them have hammocks that hang and are sort of around for them to sleep in. I have replaced a lot of that with bunk beds. If we ever get a functional hammock, I would love to come back and add some of those in here because I do feel like it's something that's really necessary for the build. And we have the debug one that I used on the Lilo and Stitch house, but it is not functional even a little bit, so it's really just going to take up space in here. And this is like kind of a smaller build. We don't have a ton of room because of the lot size, but it really wasn't like a size constraint. I didn't want to make this a super large area. It doesn't make sense for it to be really big. It's like a tiny underground house, and they don't have a lot of stuff. You can see in the background some little clutter objects, a few toys. A lot of it is just like weapons and sticks and fishing rods and vases and just random nondescript clutter all over the place. Doesn't need to be super big. We're not going to have a ton of stuff in here. The only thing that's really different in my version versus the one that they show in the film is that Tinkerbell had to have a bedroom. She's going to live here with the Lost Boys, at least for now. So the whole household is going to be the 6 Lost Boys. Number 7 will be Peter Pan, and number 8 will be Tinkerbell. I previously made Periwinkle, who is Tinkerbell's sister, way back in Mount Komorebi. That's where she lives because it's like her little winter world. And I decided, of course, that Tink had to live with these guys. There's so many ideas and like things I can do with Tinkerbell because she has a ton of films, and I could like make her own house. She has a house in those films. She doesn't necessarily have to live here, but just for the sake of like sticking to Peter Pan, she does seemingly live with them, at least part-time. But her room is kind of like a nook in the wall, like a literal hole in the wall that she sort of has decorated with her little things because she's a fairy, and it's not going to work for the purposes of having her be an actual functioning sim. She will be a sorcerer because that's what we have available right now, although I will say I am very, very confident at this point that they're probably going to add some kind of fairies pack to the game in the future. There was a point in time where I was pretty much convinced that they would never do that, but it's mostly because I felt like the end of the lifetime of The Sims was coming, and now I'm starting to feel like it's just never coming. With all of the Project Renee stuff, if you've watched any of like what was supposed to be The Sims 5 and what everybody sort of was like, this is The Sims 5, this is the next generation of Sims, it almost seems like the more we hear about Project Renee, which is the next version of The Sims, if you don't know, that's what they're calling it right now while they sort of like work on it and create it, it seems more like it's gonna be less of The Sims 5 and more so like they said this in one of the most recent videos, the live stream that they did. The Sims 4 is going to kind of exist and live on, and then this next version that they're creating of The Sims will live alongside of it, which means to me that they're just going to keep pumping out stuff packs and content and expansions and occults and all sorts of stuff for this game as long as they feel like it is profitable to them and that they can get away with it. Kind of crazy to me to think about because I always imagined that The Sims 4 would come to an end and that we would have an endpoint kind of in the near future where I had to get to almost like a finish line, where I know I have 17 worlds, 15 worlds, and that's how many there is, and that's how many I have to fit movies into, and then I'm sort of done. But there is no end in sight as it stands right now. It's good for me, it's bad for me. It makes me feel like I'll never get to the end of the save file in the way that like I imagined it to be. But it also means we get to create so many things that the save file wouldn't have had if they just ended it, right? There's a lot of films that are never going to get touched on for the Disney save. There's a lot that maybe deserved a little bit more time. I wanted more characters. There's worlds and like locations that certain builds and certain characters would fit a lot better in than where I've actually placed them or where I plan to place them. So it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. But it also means that I think we're getting fairies. I don't know if it'll be soon. I don't know if it'll be an expansion pack, but I'm hopeful that they will be interesting and different enough from spellcasters, and I really hope there is some kind of like size change that comes with them. The ability to make themselves small as characters. I don't know. I don't even know what they could do with it. I think if they go with like spellcaster sorcerer route but make it a little bit more element based, that's probably ideal. And of course give the ability to fly, and of course give the ability to have wings But also what would be cooler is the ability to not have wings, but still be a fairy, like just flight in general. And if that's the case, then we could make Peter a fairy as well. Because the only reason I would obviously not want to make a fairy is because he has wings. So if they take away that side of it or make it optional, I would love that, because then we can maybe make Peter a fairy as well. So he has the ability to fly. And he will not be a sorcerer. I know so many of you are going to want to know that, and probably some of you are going to, be more towards leaning the idea that he should be. And that's totally, if you want to make him a sorcerer, you can punch in one little cheat code and go ahead and do that. But I don't love when characters that are not supposed to be magical, even though like he has magical elements to him, like he can fly, obviously, there is things that he would be able to do as a spellcaster that would be incredibly annoying in gameplay and don't make sense for his character. Like there's no reason for him to be going around casting actual spells and like doing any kind of magic on anyone. So you can't get away with it, in my opinion, in the way that you would think. So I usually just opt, if like a character doesn't have dedicated magic, like they're shown using magic, it doesn't make sense for them to maybe do a spell here and there, I won't do magic. Now, I've obviously done fairies, and some of them don't do magic, but they have magical elements, so there is some exception to that. It would just be a crime, basically, in my opinion, to make like Tinkerbell and all of her little fairy friends and not have them have some magical abilities, especially some of the other characters from the Tinkerbell films that are shown like really doing a lot of things with elements, with water, with, we can kind of play around with what given spells those Sims are taught and are using to give like those vibes. I do intend to make some other characters from the Tinkerbell universe in those films later on in different locations where it may be applicable. There's so many really cool things that I could do with that, to do like a Pixie Hollow and like a little fairy tree and everything like that. And again, if we had more space in Sulani, that's definitely an idea that could have really gone here, but I feel like we can get away with that kind of stuff in other locations as well. So I did save that idea. Now, some key features for Peter's room. Obviously, I'm going to overdo it with the green tones to kind of give you the idea. He does get his own space. He's shown in the film having his own space. He has this huge bear tapestry. It's a skin, if we're honest. It's a bear skin over his door that he goes in and out of. And I really tried to dig around and find an object that I felt like I could use in place of that to represent it. But I really didn't find anything that I love. So I ended up just using some other vines and things like that. Additionally, I want to say, when it comes to like what this place visually looks like in the film, it's basically just dirt walls with like roots from the tree kind of cutting in here and there, and it makes a lot of the walls and the rooms feel like they more so have like angles and lots of like nooks in the wall and like organic shelves and things like that. Stuff that's not as easy to replicate in a game like this, especially when I have to think about the fact that it's got a function and there's so many characters that are living here and they all have to sleep and be okay. And this is going to be a weird household because a lot of the character create a sim video will be next, and I hope you guys like how the characters turned out. They're all going to be very young, so pretty much all of the Lost Boys are going to be children, and then Tinkerbell and Peter are going to be teens. So that's already like a lot of chaos. There's no adult in the household. I wasn't even sure that you were allowed to place a household like that, but I playtested it and it does work. I'm trying to picture who would be like the caretaker, because they don't have a Wendy, right? Like, who feeds them? They're all going to have to go to school, unfortunately, because of like the mechanics of the game, so that's kind of gonna, be a part of it. I wish you could just get rid of that. You could opt them out of school, like even as children, because realistically, none of them do go to school and they don't care about their grades, and it's like not something you really want to be dealing with when you're playing this household. Again, that's something that a mod would be really great for, and I'm sure there is some that I personally will probably use when doing the save. And then there is like hammocks coming down, and there's not a ton of toys or things to do for the boys because a lot of them are doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they don't have parents around to watch them, but I have to give them some things to do. So I do have to put in like some toy chests and some random things here and there, a little bit of decor. There is some really cute stuff from one of the newer packs. I think it's the Growing Together pack. It had this amazing item that is like a laundry basket with a teddy bear in it. It's a pirate crow's nest. It's so cute. And then there's another one I use that you can see tucked underneath the bunk bed that is a pirate teddy bear on like a little raft with a floaty palm tree. It's perfect for the vibes of what these children are and like their day to day. But they didn't have anything like that in the film. I just like couldn't stop myself from the opportunity to use those types of objects in here. It's really, really necessary. And then all of them wear costumes of animals except for Peter. So they're all like an animal. And I tried to theme the room a little bit after some of the animals that they are. We've got a bear, a skunk, 2 raccoons, and a bunny and a fox. So anything that was like sort of even remotely close to the colors of those types of animals, or just like any toys that referenced any of those animals, tried to kind of coordinate it from there. Peter is also shown having some kind of a bigger chair that is seemingly used as almost like a throne in this bigger space. So I did give him like this really big chair, and it has a bear hanging over the top of it. I end up removing the one that I used in the video because it just doesn't sit in the chair properly. Again, that like similar idea with the tapestry over the door. We just didn't have like a lot of great bear objects, and we definitely don't have like a bear skin rug as far as I can tell from going through the catalog. My catalog knowledge is getting a little rusty because I haven't gotten some of the more recent packs until recently. I've been skipping like the last few expansion packs and the kits and things like that. So whereas I used to know like literally everything that we had and where everything was, nowadays I feel like I'm going through and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know we had that, or that's really cool, that's new, that's neat. I ended up buying a lot of packs recently, so I've got a lot of new stuff and I'm just like not familiar with everything that's going on. But I couldn't find any bearskin. So if I'm wrong about that, please tell me which pack it's from, because I can almost see one in my head. But other than that, just kind of had to get rid of that idea. I did cut from today's video like the bathroom and the kitchen. Of course, we have to have it in the space so that the home functions really well for all the characters here, but it's not super interesting. It's not cluttered. It's like very simple. Made it mostly so that it's like extra space for Sims to get around and just for functionality really. So didn't include that, but it will be at the screenshots at the end of the video. And then to round out the video here, we have Miss Tinkerbell's room. She is a little maker. She's a fairy. So she's got to have like all her little fairy bits and some like collectibles. She is a tinker fairy. So she uses like more so like wigs and leaves and string, and she's more of like an inventor and a creator. So the woodworking table is like an absolute must for her, but I also felt like she might be into sewing / embroidery / knitting, that kind of a deal. So she's got like a couple skill-based objects in here, whereas Peter, I feel like Peter would be more into fishing and those kinds of things. So I can't like place a fishing rod in his room, but he does have like the one case with all of the fishing lures in it in his space. She's got some more hobby-based objects in her area, and lots more plants, lots more like if the furniture felt like it could have been a plant of some kind that she's repurposed, then I'm more likely to use it. That big wardrobe comes from the high school years pack. It's newer to me, and to me when I look at it, it kind of looks like it could be a couple of leaves like put together, or I don't know, it's got this texture to it that I found really interesting, so I felt like it could be used in this space even though it's not something that, you know, aesthetically is an identical match to everything else that's in here. If you can think of any more hobbies that you think Tinkerbell would be into, please let me know, because I'm going to be working on some of that kind of stuff up and coming here in the next few weeks. Got to put all my little hobbies and traits onto my characters when we make the next version of this save file. I did put a couple of spellcaster things in here as well, obviously, given her occult. But let me know what you think. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you all in the next one.